Good morning, everybody. This is Mr. Rader. It is April 10th, 2020. This is a lesson for economics. Today, we're going to take a break from doing the Quality of Life Innovations Public Policy Proposal, and I'm going to have a mini lesson here on a topic that many of you have come to me asking about when we were still in class, and that is how to file your taxes. So what I'm going to ask is that you watch at least 5 to 10 minutes of this video and complete the discussion questions on Google Classroom. The lesson itself will probably take closer to 20 minutes as I want to walk you through some of the key components for filing your taxes. Okay, so usually every year, the deadline for filing taxes is April 15th. However, since we are in such uncertain and turbulent times due to the coronavirus, the IRS extended the deadline to July. That said, if you worked during the year 2019, you should file your taxes. I've sat down with two of your classmates this year during tutoring before we went remote, and we filed using H&R Block. It took us about 25 to 30 minutes on average, and I know one student in particular got over $800 back. So it's definitely something you should try out if you did have a job in 2019 that was on the books where taxes was taken out. Okay, so in terms of assignments I need you to work on, so if you're one of the students or partnerships looking to go into the competition, your recommendation, implementation, and financial implication papers really should be done by this upcoming Monday, April 13th. Everybody else, you're going to have an additional week to work on that paper. Okay, so let's go over a few forms before we go into the actual online software. So this is what the tax return looks like for the year 2019. It's what's called a Form 1040 U.S. Individual Income Tax Return. They first want to know what your filing status is going to be. Single, married, file jointly, married, file separately, head of household, or qualifying widower. You'll fill out your contact information, name, address, social security number if you have one, and then you will indicate in terms of your W-2. It'll list your wages, your salaries, and your tips. That would go into box 1. Back in the older days, when people really filled out the forms on paper, including myself, you had to fill it out with pen and paper. And nowadays, the online software fills in most of this information for you as long as you have your documents. Box 2 will be relevant if you have savings accounts with interest or savings CD accounts, certificate deposits. You would get interest. You'd get what was called a 1099 INT form. If not, then you don't have to worry about that. Box 3A is qualified dividends. It's really only if you own stocks, which again, at this point in your lives, would probably not be the case for most of you. Okay, in terms of the deductions, if you are single and you cannot be claimed by somebody else's dependent, you would get a standard deduction of $12,200. If, however, someone can claim you, so for example, your parent or guardian can claim you as their dependent, you would have to indicate you as the dependent and you would get less of a deduction. Okay. This is the second page, so it'll indicate what your tax would be. So that information gets put on 12 line 12A and 12B. You fill out the rest of these lines, and then it'll tell you how much you paid. And then based on what you owed in box 12, it'll tell you whether or not you overpaid. And then in box 21A, it will be your refund if you are entitled to a refund. And again, it'll be based on box 19 subtracting by box 16, basically how much you paid and what your tax should be. Okay, if you or your parents choose to bring your taxes to an accountant, that would be the third-party designee, and that would be where they would fill out their information, including the paid preparer's information here on these boxes. However, if you could do it yourself, it's pretty straightforward. You could save anywhere from $100 to $250 by doing it yourselves. Okay, so that's the 1040 form. So this is what a typical paycheck stub might look like. So it'll tell you what your regular hours are, how much you make per hour, how many hours, what the pay would be in that given period, and what the year-to-date pay would be. If you worked overtime, it would indicate, for example, time and a half. however many hours, so on and so forth, and you have what's called gross pay. Gross pay is what you make before the taxes and and voluntary deductions come out. So if you look at the deductions here, we have federal income tax, Social Security tax, Medicare, state, and other tax could be things like city tax. So if you live in the 5 boroughs in New York City, you would pay city tax. Other usually indicates voluntary deduction. So 401k is a retirement plan. If we are fortunate enough to be able to go back to school late May, early June, we will have lessons on this and I'll be happy to explain it further. But basically, a 401k is an investment account where you can buy stocks and mutual funds. It kind of goes into whatever it is your job offers. Medical insurance, if you need medical insurance, so on and so forth. And then basically, you take gross pay, subtract by mandatory deductions, voluntary deductions, and then you can see what your net pay actually is. Okay. This is an example for an employee of the city of New York. So some of you someday may have government jobs, and this is a pay statement you could find online as well. It breaks down how much you're making per pay period, what your federal tax would be, Social Security, Medicare, city tax. If you have a pension, it would indicate what your pension number would be, and it would tell you your regular pay, how many hours you worked, and what the corresponding pay would be, along with deductions and net pay. This is what it looks like if you become a state employee. The information is pretty much the same. They break down what an employee ID number would be, what the job would be, what the annual salary would be, and then it breaks down how much a person made in terms of what their salary is, what their year to date was as of that date, which looks like September 2018, and the taxes federal, Medicare, Social Security, New York. These relate to a retirement plan and a health insurance plan. And then you can see on the bottom the current total year to date gross and the taxable gross. Okay, so this is the screenshot for H&R Block. There are many online services you can use. Two of the most popular are H&R Block and TurboTax. For the last several years, really since 2011, I have been using H&R Block. It works well for me. It's a pretty transparent process to work with. Okay, so let's take a look and see how to actually do this. So you'll go into Google and you'll Google H&R Block free tax file. I go to the first link that's not an advertisement and it'll bring you to this page. On this page, you have a couple of different options. Now, for all of you, I would really only recommend the free online program because your returns are not that complicated. However, for those of you whose parents may be homeowners or yourselves may be homeowners someday, Deluxe Online is a pretty good program to use. So I'm going to click File for Free. And it's going to bring me into this account. Now, at this point, if you don't have an account, you can create an account. All it's going to require is a username, password, and email. I'm going to click Create Account later since I don't want to actually create an account, but I want to show you what it looks like. You're going to agree to their license agreement. And this is the form that you're going to see when you begin to file your taxes. As you go through these forms, I always recommend read every question. On the upper left-hand corner, they'll explain to you what your refund will be as you'll go through it. If you want more information, you can click on any one of these things and it would explain relevant information. So it does help to read this over, but basically you don't really have much of a choice in terms of information here. You can, for some things, you can just choose not to do it. So I'm going to click no thanks. Other things you do have to use it. So I'm going to say I've never filed taxes before because that may be the case for some of you. Okay, so then you'll fill out information. I'm going to write in a whole bunch of fake information. And again, when you do your own taxes, it should be in real information. So I'm going to call this and I'm going to put in a date of birth. I'm going to put in today's date, and I'm going to say the date of birth was 1999. Okay, marital status, I'm going to say single. Okay, and again, I'm going to click next. It's going to ask you for a social security number. Again, if you have it, you'd want to be able to put it in. Again, I'm going to put in a fake number just to go through the process here. Okay. It'll then ask you your phone number. Again, I'm going to make something up, 718-985-6598. And they're going to want to know an email address. So I'm going to, again, use a fake one just for this purpose. Again, when you file your taxes for real, just like when I filed my own taxes for real, you want to put in actual information. This is just so that you can see what the forms will look like from when you put in your information all the way to the wrap up. Okay, so then they're going to ask me a series of questions, and you just answer them as it is relevant to you. And again, I'm trying to fill this out as many of you would, full-time student, and claiming that somebody else would know you meant. You can click how would I know, and it'll actually explain it to you, and it tells you exactly why that might be the case. And again, for most of you, it's going to be the case where your parents would claim you. If you're either under the age of 19 or if you're a full-time student in college, they can continue to claim you until you are 24 years old. Okay, next. Yes. You want to say that you did not earn half of your own support. Again, the assumption is your parents are taking care of you. Okay, so I'm going to click next. Okay, I'm going to click next again. Now it's going to ask you about income. So you can click start, and it's going to ask you some information related to your job. So for now, I'm just going to say that the employer is Target. And again, you would have an EIN. If you look at your W-2, it'll be on the usually the top left-hand corner. Again, I'm just going to put in a bunch of fake numbers. You want to put in real numbers. So you can either take a picture with your cell phone, you can upload a PDF, or you could enter it manually. I'm going to click enter manually just so you can see what it says. So then you write out the address, the zip code, and again, it's going to ask me for all this. So I'm going to put in a bunch of fake information for now. Okay, notice when you put in the zip code, it'll automatically pull in a city in the state of New York. Again, you look for any information that needs to be filled in. All right, so you have the same information. Now you want the employee's information. So we're going to go with the employee's address. I forget exactly what I put in before, so I'm just going to say 123 Fake Street. I'm going to put the same zip code, and it'll appear with the city and the state. Boxes 1 to 11, I'm going to put in, again, some fake information. They always round to the nearest dollar, so let's say you made $2,500. Let's say they took out $150. Let's say your Social Security would be the same, 2,500. Let's say they took out, again, I'm just making the numbers up. You would have real numbers on your pay stubs. 7, 8, 9, and 10 usually are blank in most cases, so you have to look at your W-2 to confirm that one way or the other. Boxes 12A to 12D, if you have codes, you'll fill them out. So, for example, myself, I do have those codes. My tax returns are more complicated, so I had to fill out that kind of information. Box 14 really speaks to retirement plans, so again, it'd be blank unless it's relevant. So we're going to put in the state. You're going to go to the state of New York, assuming that you worked in the state of New York. I'm going to go back to the employee ID because I don't want to bring up any red flags by putting in information that doesn't appear the way it should. And state wages, I said it was 2,500, so I'm going to put the same thing, 2,500. I'm going to say they took out $125. I'm going to say my local income tax was $36, and the locality name is New York City. All right. So it even tells you enter New York City if you earned income in New York City. The tax rate for New York City, I believe, is about 3.6% on the first, I want to say $65,000 of income. I don't remember the number off the top of my head, and I don't have the information in front of me. For the state, it's around 6%. Okay, so notice it tells me I didn't put some stuff in. So box 18, local wages, box 19, local withholding. So I'm going to go to box 18, and I'm going to put in the same amount of wages that I had earned. And I'm going to click next. If you get a second W-2, it could be a corrected W-2. You would click that. Usually you don't have to actually click any of that. Okay, so it is telling me some information. Probably the numbers I gave were a little high, so I'm going to change the number to 52. Again, you go with what your actual numbers are. Okay, so if you notice, based just on the income of $2,500, that it'll tell you right away what your refund will be, and it'll appear also in the top left-hand corner. Okay, so that would be it. I'm going to click next. Then they're going to ask me again, is this my address? And again, just for this demonstration purposes, it's all fake information. You'd want to put in real information. Okay, so then you tell them that you're a student, since that's what you do. Even if you have a part time job, which is why you'd be doing this in the first place, you still want to say that you are a student because you are a full time student if you're currently in high school. Okay, so you'll read this next question and click the appropriate answer. Same with this one. And then it will ask you to create a username and password. Again, I'm just not going to do it. Hopefully, it'll let me keep going. Okay, did I live in New York? Yes. Did I live in New York the whole year? Yes. Did I earn money in any states besides New York? No. Okay, so then it breaks down what the income could be. And then click add income if I had more. So, for example, if you had a savings account or a certificate of deposit, you would get a 1099 INT. And that could be additional information. Now, since this was the free edition, it doesn't really give me options to put in the 1099 DIV because that's a dividend. It's a little different, so I don't see it appearing right here. The 1099Q deals with qualified withdrawals from 529 accounts. You could talk to your parents if they have that or not, but that is something that is there for a reason. Okay, so then they break it down. So they can tell you some things. Employment. So they do give you access to the one for dividends. So if you had dividends, you would visit the topic and you can go from there. I'm not going to do it for this purpose. If any of you want to actually know how to do that because you own stocks, I can show you. And again, you could read any of these things. So if you owned your own business, they could explain how you do self-employment tax, so on and so forth. If you have any kind of sales and transfers, things of that nature, so on and so forth. So I'm going to say yes, I'm finished. Next. Again, next. Deductions. We wouldn't really be doing any of these things at this point. So I'm going to click next. And then they tell you all the things that you could do. So if someday you become a homeowner or your parents own a home, there's the mortgage interest rate deduction you could do. If you donate money to charity, you can write off the donations as charitable contributions, so on and so forth. So I'm going to click yes. I have no additional deductions, so I'm going to click next. Yeah, so they're going to tell me do the standard deduction. So then they explain what the standard deduction would be. I'm going to click next. Okay, so then they tell you what your deduction would be. I'm going to click next again. It'll tell you if you have any credits. So it wouldn't work for the 2019 tax year, but for 2020, the assumption is that you're planning on enrolling in a secondary school. So you may be able to get tuition deductions based on what it is that you're actually going through. So I'm going to click and just show you how to do that just so that you know how to do it. Okay, so notice it says that since someone is claiming you as a dependent, you cannot claim a tuition tax break. Do not worry, we'll continue to look for other credits and deductions. So if you were independent on your own, you could get that deduction. Okay, I'm going to click next. Again, these things you can read the questions and you can learn more about what each of these things are. And it kind of just breaks down what the opportunities could be. This one is a good one to take advantage of once you are out of college if you have to pay bills for graduate school or for your own children someday when they go to school. Okay. All of this would not really be relevant to you at this point in your lives. Okay. And then they break down some information. I wouldn't check off any of this unless you really want to. You could read, you could click learn more to learn more about these things. Next. Next. It'll do a quick accuracy review and then it will bring you to the state taxes. So I'm going to click next. Okay, so it breaks it down based on the income that I gave. what the deductions would be. Since this hypothetical student really made basically nothing, it was like $2,500, you get the full tax amount back. So we would get the full $150 back. Okay, so then they're going to do a sales pitch for marketing. They'll explain sort of the things that they'll do if you go with their more advanced versions. I'm still going to say no, and I'm going to click next. And I'm going to click next. It'll then transfer all of your information to your state. Again, they'll ask you about your residency status. It'll ask you about the address. The address should be the same. It'll ask you your county and school district. And again, if you put Brooklyn, it'll automatically fill out this information for you. If you had dependents, which wouldn't make any sense for this moment in your life, you could add that. And again, it's going to be the similar kind of thing. So you can see under college savings plans, you could learn more by clicking into any of these things. Notice so far, it looks like we're going to get the full state tax back because the student really, in this hypothetical, did not make much money. And again, you would explain all of this information. We're going to say that you did not own or rent. Again, the assumption is you're living with your parents or guardians. Credit's not available. It'll break down what your credits can be. I'm going to say I'm done. It breaks down what all the different amounts are. You can always click explain amount, and then they will explain to you what it is and or why it is what it is. Okay. And again, this should take you a little more time to do it on your own. I'm doing this relatively quickly just to show you what it will be with hypothetical numbers. And again, if any of this actually applies to you, you would check off the box. All right, it's going to ask you that email address again. I forget exactly what I made it, so I'm just going to try john123@gmail.com. And it breaks down again the information. So it looks like this hypothetical tax return, everything would come back because the income is below what the standard deduction would be. So in this case, if you made more than $3,100 for the year, you would likely not get additional tax money back. Okay, next. All right, I'm going to say keep the return. I'm going to click next. And it breaks down everything in terms of the final. So this person would get back $150 from the federal government, $161 from the state government. They're going to ask you, would you like to have a tax pro look it over for $50? I'm going to say no, thank you. And once it goes through this, it's going to ask you how you want your money back. Do you want it as a check or do you want it as direct deposit? Again, I'm going to say no to any of this, and I'm just going to click next. All right, so it's asking me to create the account. It may not let me do it. Let's see. All right, so it's asking me to create the account. I'm not going to do that right now, but basically the final steps that you would need for this is that you would put in, if you want to direct deposit, your bank's routing number. You could just Google it. So, for example, if you had Chase Bank, it could be Chase Bank routing number NYC, and you would get the routing number. Then you would have your account number. You could alternatively have them mail you a check, and that is another option that you can do as well. All right, everybody. So that is how we file taxes. I hope that you were able to learn something valuable and useful from this video presentation. And if you have additional questions or you'd like some help doing this on your own, by all means, feel free to reach out. And I hope you all have a nice day. All right, take care.